Hey y'all, welcome back. Today is an expansion of a previous episode based on listener questions I received after my interview with Lydia Melton, who is the Chief of Staff at Helium, which is a VR company that is a drugless solution for stress, anxiety, and burnout. So today, we're jumping deeper in the pool into the science behind burnout, why it happens so frequently in business, and what leaders can do to help their employees combat it. And if you want to go back and listen to the episode that talks about the impact on the P&L when it comes to burnout, check out episode 23, which was my interview with Lydia Melton. Okay, so let's dive in. The science behind burnout involves a complex interplay of physiological, psychological, and environmental factors. Now, I'm not a scientist, but this is what I've learned along the way. Burnout is characterized by emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a reduced sense of a personal accomplishment. And I would say I have experienced all of these, but I have I'd say at the largest level, the detachment or depersonalization has been how burnout impacts me. Understanding the underlying mechanisms can help in identifying and addressing burnout more effectively. So let's go. Let's start out with the psychological factors. The first to discuss is chronic stress response. So persistent exposure to stressors such as a high workload, role conflict, lack of control, all of these activates the body's stress response. Individuals assess the stressors based on their significance and the resources available to cope with them. A perceived inability to manage stressors effectively can lead to burnout. And I would say how I saw this play out in my life when I was a COO and things were really hard. There was a lack of trust in the organization, a misuse of power, lack of direction. I was drinking a lot, alcohol, and that obviously does not help. It negatively impacts sleep. It was causing higher cortisol levels for me. It was causing issues with my hormones. And so I felt like even though I was coping, I wasn't coping well, and I could just tell I'm not managing this stress well. I was doing yoga, I was walking, I've got good girlfriends. Like I checked all the boxes, and my therapist was like, you're doing all the things right. You're just staying in a very high stress environment, and I just wasn't coping well. The second is emotional exhaustion. That is a depletion of emotional resources. So continuous stress depletes emotional reserves, leading to feelings of being emotionally drained and overwhelmed. Emotional exhaustion can result in a diminished ability to empathize with others, contributing to that depersonalization. And I would see this play out where all day long I would give it all that I had, and then I'd pick up my kid from school or maybe have a conversation with my husband, and all of a sudden I'm like irritable when nothing's wrong. Like my kid's not doing anything wrong. He's being age appropriate. He's just wanting my attention, whatever it is. Or my husband's just trying to like have a functional conversation about our life, what's for dinner, whatever. And I take everything so personally. And that's because I've got this emotional exhaustion. So let's talk a little bit deeper about depersonalization. As a coping mechanism, individuals may develop a cynical attitude and detach from their work, their colleagues, or their personal life, like I mentioned, leading to a sense of impersonal and negative attitudes toward the job or toward others. That's a tough one. It also amounts to like your inability to see what's good in life. I was seeing a reduced personal accomplishment, so a sense of inefficacy. Burnout often includes a feeling of incompetence and lack of achievement, exacerbating the emotional toll. And I was just talking to my team at Salt and Light about this the other day on a call. I asked Brittany, my executive assistant, would you please put some time on our team meeting agenda to talk about celebrations? Something that I've seen in the past from me is I am so goal oriented, and I allow myself to go toward burnout constantly. And because of this, I'm always moving the goal needle. So I might hit a goal, but then it's like not good enough, and I want another goal, and I'm constantly moving everything forward, which has made me successful, but I'm not ever recognizing normally my own personal accomplishments. So then I struggle with imposter syndrome and other things, even though I'm accomplishing so much, and a lot of times so much more than what other people are capable of. But for me, I have a hard time appreciating what I've done because I've detached from it. Let's talk about psychological factors next. So now we're going to get into some more sciencey terms. So HPA axis dysregulation. This HPA is your thalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So chronic stress leads to the overactivation of the HPA axis, resulting in the excessive release of cortisol and other stress hormones. And I talked about like my dysregulation with cortisol. Prolonged elevation with cortisol can impair cognitive function, weaken the immune system, and increase the risk of chronic health conditions. I also saw a lot of weight gain. So during that really stressful period of my life, I gained around 30 pounds and I could not get an ounce of it off. Even though I was doing hot yoga and lifting weights and doing all these things, I could not move the needle. Now, add on to the fact that I was drinking alcohol, like it was saving my life when really it was doing the opposite. But I had such high cortisol that I couldn't lose any weight. My body was just holding on to it. Additionally, I got cold sores all of the time. I also almost always had like a stopped up nose. And I'm not talking about allergies. I'm just talking about like I caught everything, it felt like. And that's because my immune system was weakened because of this HPA axis and how it was overactivated all the time. Another topic I love discussing is our central nervous system. So let's talk about our autonomic nervous system imbalances that happen when we're headed toward burnout. So your sympathetic nervous system, your SNS, let's talk about that. So chronic stress keeps your sympathetic nervous system activated. This leads to the flight or fight response, which can cause physical symptoms such as increased heart rate and blood pressure. Now, I'm going to pause on that for just a second. So I was experiencing this. I was in fight or flight very often. And so years ago, and if you listen to the pod very often, I do a sponsor role and it's on Magic Mind. The reason why I drink Magic Mind instead of drinking all of the coffee that I used to drink, coffee with caffeine, I will drink decaf, but it's because I was in my therapist's office one day and he said, it's probably time for you to get on a prescription because you are wound so tight and you just can't handle anything else. And I was like, what could I do to make this better? Like, I'm trying to sleep at night. I'm trying to get my downtime. I'm now looking back since I've changed so much about my lifestyle. I see a million things that I was doing wrong at the time. I couldn't get out of it. But what he said was stop drinking caffeine. You're adding a stimulant. And so if you're already like experiencing increased heart rate and increased blood pressure because your SNS is activated because of chronic stress, then you add a stimulant to that and it's causing all kinds of problems. So if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, but I can't stop drinking my Alania or whatever, like my caffeine drinks, like, well, that's up to you. Do you want to feel like you're going to have a panic attack all the time? Like for me, that's where I was at. I was having panic attacks. Or I was feeling like I could have a panic attack at any moment. And it would be like the smallest thing. And I would be like, I can't catch my breath. Literally, I just can't get a deep breath. And it was because of my SNS being overly activated. It's just mind blowing. So if you're a person who's struggling with this, I would highly recommend you try 30 days without caffeine. My therapist was like, well, if you would just drink 8 ounces of caffeine a day, you'd be fine. But I am kind of an all or nothing type of gal. So I was like, I'm just not going to drink caffeine. Within 30 days, I went back to him and said, I'll never drink caffeine again. And he was like, okay. I really haven't drank caffeine again. And May was 4 years since that therapy appointment. So I really gave it up because it made me feel that much better. So it's something for you to consider. Yes, did I have a headache for the first 4 days? Yeah, I did because I drank a lot of caffeine back then. But once I got away from it, I don't need it to stay awake. But also I get sunlight in the morning. My circadian rhythm is healthy. I sleep at a minimum 7 hours a night, but I try to get 8 or more. Like there's a number of things that I have done. It's not just the caffeine elimination, but it was the beginning for me. All right, that's our sympathetic nervous system. Let's talk about our parasympathetic nervous system, so the PNS. Burnout often involves a reduced activation of the PNS, which is responsible for rest and digest functions, leading to a state of chronic arousal and fatigue. So we talk about how we're like mindlessly scrolling. That's what's happening. We are in a state of chronic arousal. We want to be stimulated all of the time. So we've gotten used to this, and this is what we want. So then there's this reduced activation of the PNS. So our ability to just zone out, chill, our bowels aren't working the way that they're supposed to because our body's not resting. Like if you're a person who's like, no, I don't rest well, it's likely because you've got a reduced activation of the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system. But you are actually, times that you could be resting, you're filling it with like nonsense. For a lot of us, it's mindless scrolling. So something for you to think about. There's also a neurotransmitter imbalance. So let's talk serotonin and dopamine. And again, I'm talking about that mindless scrolling and the hits of dopamine that we get on social media. So chronic stress and burnout can affect the levels of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which are crucial for mood regulation, motivation, and reward. So when we are chronically stressed, when we are burnt out, that's going to lower our serotonin and our dopamine. Then we can't regulate our moods. Then we are not motivated. Then we do not know how to, in a healthy way, seek rewards. And so we are depressed. We are anxious. These are things, it's like this never-ending cycle, and we take a pill for this. Many of us do. And I get that sometimes that's what people need to get out of the dark night of the soul. But a lot of this is like addressing the root of the issue. And until we address the root of the issue, it's not going to get better. All right, let's talk about environmental factors here. And I'm just going to skim over these because then we're going to get deeper into like how this happens at work. But one of the environmental factors is our work environment. So jobs with high demands and low control over our work processes are strongly associated with burnout. So high demand, low control. Also a lack of support. So inefficient support from supervisors or from colleagues can exacerbate feelings of isolation and stress. That goes into organizational culture. Value misalignment and the lack of recognition and reward. So when employees' values and goals don't align with those of the organization, it can lead to disengagement and burnout. And previously on the pod about you needing to develop a value statement for your business. If you don't have one, how does an employee know what they're signing up for? And then how are you holding them accountable to those values? So we need to identify what our values are. We need to identify what the goals are. And then as an employee, we need to determine, do I truly align to these? Not, am I looking for a job? Do I align to these? Because if I don't, then this is likely going to further down the road end up in disengagement and burnout. And then a lack of recognition and inadequate reward systems also contribute to the feelings of underappreciation and burnout. What's it all for? What's the point of all of this? Okay, let's talk about biopsychosocial models. So the first is the interaction of factors. And I know we're getting super sciencey here. Just hang with me because this part's almost over. But this is important for us to understand because these aren't just, a lot of us are like, these are just feelings. I'm just feeling this way. There is science behind it. And until we understand how we got here, we're not going to be able to get ourselves out of it. And we can't really count on our workplace to help us get out of it. This is an us problem, something that we have to understand. Burnout is best understood through biopsychosocial models, which it takes into consideration the interaction between biological, psychological, and social factors. Personal characteristics such as resilience, coping strategies, and social support networks play a significant role in how individuals experience and manage burnout. And so again, when I'm talking about our workplace, I am going to give some tips on like how leaders can help with this, but we can't count on our workplace to get us out of this. There are individual differences. How resilient we are, what our coping strategies are. Like I mentioned, when my coping strategy, which wasn't a very great strategy, wasn't an intentional strategy, it just became my strategy, was drinking, was happy houring, was pairing a cocktail with every single bite of food that I took. That wasn't a very good coping strategy. So I wasn't able to handle things very well. Our social support networks, what do those look like? Do we have fulfillment outside of work in our personal life? Those are all playing a significant role. The science behind burnout involves a combination of these psychological, physiological, and environmental factors that interact in complex ways. Chronic stress triggers emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a sense of inefficacy, while psychological changes involve dysregulation of that HPA axis we talked about, the autonomic nervous system imbalance, and neurotransmitter disruptions. Environmental factors such as high job demands, low control, lack of support, misalignment of values, these all further contribute to the development of burnout. So understanding these mechanisms can help in designing effective interventions to prevent and address burnout. Now, we all know burnout and stress are common issues in the workplace. So we've been focusing kind of on the personal side of things, but in the workplace this happens and it significantly impacts employee well-being and productivity. Here are several reasons why in the workplace we see this occurring. We're going to get a little bit deeper here. The first is high workload. People are overworked and they have unrealistic deadlines. So employees are often given too much work to handle, leading to long hours and insufficient time to recover. Tight deadlines can create a constant sense of urgency and pressure, leading to stress. So let's say you're a leader, like myself, I love a good deadline. I love a good timeline. That's really what motivates me. But if you are constantly putting people on tight deadlines and everything becomes urgent, and this is how you're leading your people, you're just putting them on the constant stress cycle and you're negatively impacting them and you're pushing toward burnout. The second reason why this happens at work is a lack of control, micromanagement, and limited decision-making power. Employees who are closely monitored and have little autonomy over their work can feel powerless and stressed. That sounds gross. I actually think my next episode is going to be on micromanagement because I hear this all the time, and usually it's because it's a weak leader and they just don't know how to lead, so they're micromanaging to get everything done. When employees are unable to make decisions about their tasks and their projects, they feel undervalued and frustrated. All of this points to that lack of personal control in the workplace. Number 3 reason why this happens, poor work-life balance. We all know this one. This one's kind of the obvious, but getting more specific, blurred boundaries and excessive overtime, or you're a salaried person, and so you don't even get paid for your extra overtime. The inability to separate work from personal life, especially in remote working scenarios, can lead to stress and burnout. But I would say let's take it back to the workplace. I worked at a place that culture was, I'd say Google-esque. It was supposed to be really fun. They gave away t-shirts and had parties and you could hacky sack or whatever. For a person like me, that was stressful because I'm just kind of a down to business type of gal, because then I want to get out of work and spend time with who I choose to spend time with. Now, that made me a cultural misfit there because I didn't want all my best friends to be at work. I wanted to have a robust family life outside of work. That was not what they were going for at the time. But I would say when you've got these blurred boundaries where the employer is pushing so hard for you to have friends at work, which I know there's a ton of data out there. If you have a bestie at work, your retention levels are going to be higher. So I understand the science behind that. But when you're no, we're going to happy hour together every night, you're taking away from people's personal times, and you're likely causing issues in their marriage, and you're taking them away from their children. These blurred boundaries are poor work-life balance, even though employers do it so they could feel like they have a great culture. It's just they're misled in their perception that needs to happen or whatever. We don't all have to be best friends at work to where we're happy houring afterward, because I can tell you, after being an HR director in a company like that, the amount of affairs, DWIs, and nonsense that I saw, draw the line. This isn't the value of the workplace. Yes, we want people to have robust personal lives, but it's not up to us to create this for them at work. Okay. Sorry, I got off on my soapbox on that, but those blurred boundaries are so unhealthy. And I see people do it in the name of culture, and it's causing a lot of dysregulation in the workplace. Also, regularly working beyond normal hours can encroach on personal time and further lead to exhaustion. And if you all haven't seen, of course, the Department of Labor it seems very regularly, but it's about once every 3 to 4 years, which they're saying they're going to do it every 3 years now. They're evaluating that minimum salary threshold to determine exempt or non-exempt status. Now, there's 5 criteria, so you want to know more than that. But If you haven't already, you need to do a labor audit to determine if everyone has the right classification between exempt and non-exempt in your workplace, because this is going to hit, I believe, January 1 of 2025. You're going to be expected to have people classified correctly. And if they're not, then there's an audit. There's a whole issue that comes along with that, to where you essentially could be paying overtime back pay at the discretion of the employee's guessing of how much overtime they've worked. So, sticky situation. The bottom line is, make sure that your employees are classified correctly. And as an employee, if you don't feel like you've got that executive exemption or that administrative exemption, and I would just Google how to determine if an employee should be exempt or non-exempt. It will spit out. The Department of Labor has very clear standards on this, and there's a million governing bodies and attorneys and everyone else that plays into it. But make sure you're classified correctly, because at least if you're working overtime, you should get paid for it. But also, why are employees continually paying overtime? It sounds like to me you've got a staffing issue, you've got a daytime productivity issue, you've got a workflow issue, you've got a workload issue. We shouldn't be having overtime with regularity. That should be a one-off situation. Okay, fourth reason why this happens in the workplace: lack of support. This is inadequate management support and poor team dynamics. So employees who do not receive sufficient support and guidance from their supervisors may feel isolated, therefore feeling stressed. And a lack of cooperation or support among colleagues can create a stressful work environment. We all know this. If you don't get along with the other members of your team, it feels gross to be there. Fifth cause is job insecurity. Fear of layoffs and economic instability. So uncertainty about job stability can cause significant anxiety and stress. Broader economic issues can exacerbate fears about job security, contributing to stress. We've got a theme here. And so right now, especially whenever you're listening to this right now, I'm recording this and we are in the summer of an election year. There's a lot of uncertainty going on out there in the market, in the economy. And so it takes up chatter. And you'd like to say, at work, everybody just get to work and not be talking about that. But this is negatively impacting your people and causing stress. So some of the best things you could do is help resource them around their finances and get financial wellness and health. Number 6 cause for this is inadequate resources, insufficient tools and equipment, and lack of training. So when employees lack the necessary resources to perform their jobs effectively, it can lead to frustration and stress. Inefficient training or lack of professional development opportunities can make employees feel unprepared and stressed about their performance. And I would say, I'm guilty of this too. I put somebody in a role and I'm like, well, I'm the type of person, I'll just get in and figure it out. They applied for the role. If they don't know what they're doing, that's their own fault, whatever. But it's our job as leaders to help resource them to make sure that they have what they need, or not put them in the wrong position. Speaking of wrong position, 7th reason is role ambiguity. Unclear expectations and conflicting responsibilities. When employees are unsure about their roles, responsibilities, or their performance expectations, it can create confusion or stress. Having to manage conflicting demands or expectations leads to stress and burnout. So I've mentioned this before about clear job descriptions, clear job postings, clear performance management process, clear disciplinary action process, clear termination process. All of those are vital for helping people understand, how do I succeed here? They need to know. The 8th cause is being in a high pressure environment. I love a competitive culture and I love performance pressure. Those are things that I thrive in, but I also recognize if I'm at that too long, and sometimes I create that for myself, but if I'm at that too long, I experience burnout just as much as anyone else. And I even enjoy those type of cultures. A highly competitive work environment can create constant pressure to perform, leading to stress. That continual pressure to meet high performance standards or sales targets can cause burnout. This is a tough one for those leaders that they say, I just have high expectations for my people. Number 1, you've probably told yourself that you are a high performer and you can always perform at that level. But I would argue, I perform really high, but I also work hard, play hard. I have discretionary spending allowance. So that way I can travel, I can get away, I can take time off if I want it. I've learned how to self-regulate in those areas. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone has those resources. And so to say performance pressure, people should rise to the occasion, no one can all of the time. No one can be in a competitive culture like that all of the time and succeed. They have to take breaks. And so just being like cautious of, if you are a high pressure environment with sales quotas and all of that kind of stuff, you need to help your employees regulate by providing learning and development opportunities, plenty of downtime and true downtime, or they're going to fold under the pressure. Like we've seen it time and time again. Then they end up, moving out to a 140 acre farm by themselves and starting their own business. Oops, that's my story. I mean, that's literally the reality of what I did. Okay, number 9 cause, lack of recognition. You've got unappreciated efforts and an unclear career progression. When employees feel their hard work and contributions are not recognized or rewarded, it leads to disengagement and burnout. A lack of clear advancement opportunities can demotivate employees and increase stress levels. And I'm not saying everyone's trying to climb some kind of ladder. I love the folks who are like, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to be. But even if they don't want a title change, they still want to know, how do I get additional responsibility? How do I make more money around here? They want to understand that we all do. I don't care if you feel like it's not a driven person or not. Nobody wants to not get a pay increase for 12 years in a row. They want to understand how can they grow either in title or in pay and responsibility. If that's unclear, it's going to cause stress and demotivation. 10th cause, personal factors. So health issues and family responsibilities. Personal health problems can exacerbate stress and make it harder to cope with work demands, personal demands, all demands in general. Balancing work with family or personal responsibilities can create additional stress, particularly if workplace demands are high. I was working in the public sector. I was working in higher education for a little while. It was only an 18-month stint, and I learned pretty quickly that the public sector is not necessarily for me. I want to resource them, but full-time work in public sector is not for me. During that 18 months, I had a toddler who was biting. And gosh, if you're a parent who's had a kid that bites, it's like, what the heck do I do here? Like, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to bite them back. I want to sometimes, but that's not my style. So he was getting sent home from daycare. He threw a stapler at a teacher. He was just going through he was flexing at school, and he was a toddler, my precious little pie. And you can watch or listen to my episode with Keegan, my son, who's almost 13 now. He's grown up. But during that time, it was a hard time period, and he was struggling in daycare. So they would call me, and I'd literally have to go pick him up. They would just boot him, which I ended up changing facilities because I couldn't have that all the time. Moved him to Montessori. That was a great fit. But the facility that I had him at was no tolerance. I understand it's the teacher to student ratio and all of that. I get the policies, but it made it very hard for me. And I was in an environment where I felt like I was struggling to thrive anyway because of all of the consensus driven approach. I just couldn't get business to move forward. And then I had this child doing this at daycare calling me, and I felt like I was in and out of the work. And then at the time, my now 22-year-old stepdaughter, she was 15 at the time, she was diagnosed with epilepsy. So she was having several issues. And if you know anything about epilepsy, the medications are very brutal. They cause a lot of psychological changes. And so there was a lot that came along with that. So my family responsibilities were literally caving me in. I felt like a failure in all areas. And it was just stress that was too much for me to bear. And those were all personal factors. So it made it really hard for me to perform at work. Our people, our humans, our resources are still just humans outside of the workplace. 11th cause is the organizational culture, a toxic work environment or poor communication. A culture of blame, lack of trust, or constant negative feedback can lead to stress and burnout. Ineffective communication within the organization can lead to misunderstandings, frustration, and stress. So our culture plays a big part. And our 12th and final cause, and you guys, I know this is an exhaustive list, probably. I'm sure there's more than this, but these are the 12 that I came up with. 12th cause, change and uncertainty. I just did a recent episode on the pod on change management. It's a good one. I highly recommend you go back and listen to it. I actually think it was just my last episode. So from last week. So if you just go back an episode. but organizational change and then tech changes. Major changes within the organization, such as restructuring or mergers, things like this can create uncertainty and stress, especially if I did an episode on downsizing, layoffs, reductions in force, mass terminations. All of these things cause uncertainty and stress. All of these org changes do. Tech changes like rapid technological advancements requiring employees to constantly update their skills, that can be stressful as well. So burnout and stress in the workplace can stem from a variety of factors, including high workloads, lack of control, poor work-life balance, inadequate support, job insecurity, inefficient resources, role ambiguity, high-pressure environments, lack of recognition, personal factors, your organizational culture, and change and uncertainty. Those are my 12. Addressing these issues requires a comprehensive approach that includes supportive management, clear communication, adequate resources, and a healthy work environment. So, what in the Wild West do we do with this? Leaders play a crucial role. We know there's things happening in personal life, but leaders play a crucial role in helping employees combat burnout and lower stress. So here are several strategies that leaders can implement. We can promote work-life balance. We can encourage time off. We can give flexible work arrangements. So ensuring employees take regular breaks and vacations to recharge. Top of the list. Encourage them to disconnect from work during their time off. Don't keep them on the hook. Truly let them recharge, and also be the role model in this. And I am just as guilty. When I'm on vacation, I love working the first couple hours of every day. I literally love it because I'm quote unquote on vacation. So we haven't put anything on my calendar so I can get through emails and projects and things like that. But my team knows I try really, really hard to unplug from work at about 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning. My kid, I said he's almost a teenager. He likes to sleep, and he's an introvert like I am. He likes to kind of wake up slowly in the morning, have breakfast at home. But by 10:30 or 11, homie is ready to roll. And so my husband is a mortgage broker. He usually works in the morning too. But by 10:30 or 11, we put work down for the rest of the day. Period. Someone's going to have to text me and say SOS. Otherwise, I'm trying to be detached and truly enjoy my time off. And this is something I haven't always been good at, but I model it. It's just as important for me to model it for others as it is for me to do for myself. And then also offering flexible working hours or remote options. And I'm going to preach about remote options. I've got a previous episode on the pod on how to manage remote workers, if that would be helpful to you if you struggle with that. But this helps employees manage their personal and their professional responsibilities. The personal responsibilities don't just go away because they work for you. So help them manage it. Okay, second thing we can do, manage the workloads effectively. We want to set realistic expectations and prioritize tasks. We can set achievable goals and realistic deadlines, not making everything urgent all the time. Avoid overloading your employees with too many tasks at once. Help your employees prioritize their tasks to focus on the most important and urgent ones first. When I hear someone saying they're drowning, I set up a meeting and say, come to me with what everything is on your plate. And I usually frame it as, because I don't pay attention to all of that. Shame on me. And so let me know everything that I've tasked you with so that way I can help you. I don't say because you're not managing your time correctly and you're a mess. It's probably partially me. I keep telling them things to do, and maybe I'm not saying this one's urgent, this one's not, this one could be prioritized a month from now. I'm not doing any of that. So helping them prioritize their task is very helpful. Okay. Third thing we can do, provide adequate support and resources. Give them access to tools, give them that training and development. Ensure your employees have the necessary tools and resources to perform their jobs effectively. We can only know this, leaders. We only know this if we stop by and check in on them. If we are saying in our one-on-ones, what can I do to serve you? Okay, some employees are going to be all right, I'm going to take this as my opportunity. But most of them are yeah, I don't know. I'm in this meeting. It's not the mindset that I'm in. I don't know. I'm good. When we know that's not the reality. So unless you're out on the floor with people or popping into their work projects, you are not going to know that they're either using technology inefficiently, they didn't know that Adobe Acrobat can do that, or they didn't know that Canva provides that as an option, or they're not using AI the way that other team members are. Unless you're intentional about understanding how they're doing the work, you're not going to even know if they have the right access to tools. And they don't know either. They're just frustrated. Offering training and development opportunities to help employees feel competent and confident in their roles is important as well. And this is continuing education too. Like, it's not just like, okay, you fit the minimum qualifications, we put you in the job, we do some on-the-job training on how we do it, and then we just drop you off at the bus stop, and 5 years later, I'm wondering why you're looking for other jobs. Like, helping them grow and evolve is vital. Fourth thing we can do, foster a positive work environment. We're talking culture here, rewarding and recognizing and building that supportive culture. Regularly recognize and reward employees for their hard work and achievements. Show appreciation for their contributions. I've mentioned this book before, Language of Appreciation in the Workplace. I'll tag it in the show notes, making myself a note. That's a great way to understand how they want to receive recognition. A lot of people don't want it in a big group setting. Some people dying to have it in a big group setting. You need to figure this out, if they want it from you, if they want it from their colleagues. That way you can reward and recognize on an individual level, which is where the magic happens. And then create a supportive and inclusive work culture where employees feel valued and respected. Fifth thing we can do, encourage open communication. We can do this many different ways, but 2 quick ideas are regular check-ins and having an open door policy. Conduct regular one-on-one meetings to check in on employees' well-being and to check in on their workload. I know we don't want another meeting on the calendar, but if you don't put the meeting on the calendar, it won't happen. And stopping by and seeing them while they're filling up their water bottle is not enough. Okay. We need regular time for the employees to feel like they've got your attention. If you're a leader, you are coming across busier than you really are. And I get it. You are probably pretty busy, but you're coming across even busier. So your employees are not stopping to tell you what's hard. They're not stopping to tell you what's good. They're just not stopping to talk to you because they don't want to be a burden to you many times. And the ones who do stop and talk to you super often, you're annoyed with, let's be honest. So schedule the regular check-ins so that way they have time and space, and so do you for them. Okay, this open door policy thing, this one's tough for me. Fostering an environment where employees feel comfortable sharing their concerns and feedback. The actual phrase open door, I strongly dislike. As an introvert, as somebody who has a little neurodivergence, if I am thinking and then you interrupt me, now I've gotten healthier at this now that my parasympathetic nervous system is more regulated. But before, if you interrupted me, I wanted to literally jump on top of my desk, lunge at you like a hyena and bite you in the throat. Like, it was so irritating to me. I couldn't handle it. Now, we've talked about my level of burnout and stress that I had before. Like, obviously I couldn't handle one more thing at that time. I forced myself to, but I didn't feel like I could. Hence the panic attacks. So an open door policy doesn't literally mean, if you're a person like me, it doesn't literally mean you have to have your door open all the time. Let your people know when they can reach you though. If you have your door closed all the time, like one of my unspoken rules is I keep my door closed, but that doesn't mean that you can't interrupt me. And for example, like now I work at my home office and my son knows he can slide my door open and look at me and I'll like give him a symbol, right? Like hold on or no, or come on in. And sometimes I'll even say, because I've gotten healthier, like, hey, Bubba, I'm on a call, because the person that I'm on a call with can know that I'm a mom. Okay. I'm not afraid of hiding that. Nobody is that important. Literally, I was just trying to think, but like literally no one is that important that I can't stop and tell my son that I'm on a call. Or before I come in here and shut the door, I'll be like, hey, I'm going to be on a couple of calls, or I'm recording a podcast or whatever it is. But your open door policy doesn't have to look like something that turns you inside out. It just means make sure your people know how, when, why, frequency to reach you, when they can expect you, and what that looks like. And then also on a deeper end of that, actually listening to their concerns, receiving their feedback and not getting defensive. That's a true open door policy. Letting people know when you're available to them and then truly being available and healthy to them. That beats an open door policy any day, but that's what we're going to call it. Sixth thing we can do, promote health and well-being, wellness programs and healthy work environment. So implementing wellness programs that promote physical and mental health, such as, let's say, yoga classes or meditation sessions or fitness challenges. I had Lydia Melton on. I talked about her at the beginning of the episode. She's a part of Helium, which is a VR company. Getting VR headsets that your employees can utilize, or paying for the app so they can have moments of meditation. And then encouraging healthy habits by providing access to healthy snacks, standing desks, or ergonomic office setups. Now, for those of us in office, all of that makes sense. Don't keep the vending machine full of Snickers, but For those of us who are remote, when I had my team over, I made them a very wholesome meal, and I made sourdough rolls and quiche with farm fresh eggs and things from my garden. I juiced for them. I made sure to talk to them about the reason why I drink decaf, and they can certainly have caffeine if they want it, but I made sure that I had non-dairy milk and, all these different options, because I care about what they care about, and I really care about health, and they all know that. I've made that very clear. It's important for you to care about that for yourself and then care about it for your employees. Seventh thing that we can do is lead by example. We can model good behavior, and we can show empathy. So demonstrating healthy work habits, such as taking breaks, managing our stress, maintaining a work-life balance, that sets a great example for our teams. Being empathetic toward employees' stress and burnout is huge. Recognizing that it happens and that we care, showing understanding, and providing support when needed. And when needed, that's not when asked for, because a lot of employees aren't comfortable asking you for that. It's checking in with them, being genuine. Eighth thing we can do is implement stress management programs. We can offer workshops and trainings. And then, of course, a lot of us who have employee benefits packages have EAPs, or employee assistance programs. So offering workshops and trainings on stress management techniques, such as time management, mindfulness, relaxation exercises. I just went to a women's retreat last Friday. We started the retreat with meditation. We ended the retreat with meditation. It was a great example to set for all of this. And then providing access to those EAPs, reminding employees what they've got access to. Maybe they have options for counseling or support services for employees dealing with stress or burnout. Ninth thing we can do, encourage team collaboration through team building activities and promoting peer support. Organize team building activities to strengthen relationships and improve collaboration among team members. This can be a happy hour. I feel like I'm always knocking the happy hour. This could be a happy hour, but it can be a lot of other things too. You can get together and work on things while also providing a nourishing meal and just time for people to connect and see each other one-on-one. Encourage employees to support and help each other, creating a sense of community and shared responsibility. It's not all on one person. We share those responsibilities. 10th thing, monitor and adjust workloads. We can do this through regular assessments and delegating effectively. So regularly assess workloads and redistribute tasks if some employees are overloaded. Now, I get it. Some of the people are stingy and they want to keep all the tasks themselves. That's probably because they feel like you don't value them, or that's where their value comes from. That's a separate but related issue that needs to be addressed. And then delegating tasks appropriately to ensure a balanced distribution of work. And as a leader, sometimes this means balance your distribution of work. You're doing it all, or you feel like other people can't do it, which just isn't true, by the way. Other people are just as smart as you are, just as smart as I am. We can delegate and distribute our work, but also making sure not to overload our A player, our reliable player, and help our underperformers get up to speed, coach up or coach out. 11th thing we can do is provide career growth opportunities through career development plans and mentorship programs. So work with employees to create career development plans that align with their goals and aspirations and the needs of the organization. And then establish mentorship programs to support employees' growth and development. This can be peer mentorship too, you all. It doesn't have to be senior level. I understand senior level folks are a lot of times oh my gosh, I can't handle one more thing. Employees would love to be partnered up with each other to do peer mentorship programs. I created one of these at a mortgage company that I was at, and it was a hit. People freaking loved it. It forged lifelong relationships. 12th and final thing I'm going to bring up that we can do as leaders is address workplace issues promptly. Conflict resolution, and have transparent policies. Addressing conflicts and issues promptly to prevent them from escalating and causing additional stress is one of your number one responsibilities as a leader. Let me preach. So you are a lot of times not addressing conflict or issues promptly because you are busy, or because you don't want to offend other people, or because you don't know how to do it. You're not resourced well. You feel like you don't have the support of others. Whatever it is, it's still your responsibility. You're a leader. It's still your responsibility. And imagine if you're in a relationship and you said something to your partner, and then 6 months later, they were like, and you know what? 6 months ago when you said blah, 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 that's when I turned on you, or whatever. That's when I decided this relationship isn't worth it. Or that's when I decided, wouldn't you be like, the F? 6 months ago when I said that? One, I don't remember saying that maybe. And two, you never said boo about it. Now I've been just living my life and you've been building up bitterness and resentment. Like, how dare you? Okay, that sounds logical when we're talking about it in our romantic partnership, but we're doing the same thing to our employees at work. We're either waiting until that annual performance review and bringing it up, if you're even doing systematic annual performance reviews, which you should, by the way, and I can help with that. But if you're waiting till that, like, for shame, that's hurtful. Or if you're waiting until your next scheduled meeting with them, also, if that's once a month, that's hurtful. Like, this isn't a great way to treat people. So prompt conflict resolution, let it be your mantra. I'm going to deal with issues head on, no matter how uncomfortable for me, because I'm the leader and that's my responsibility. And then ensuring workplace policies are clear, fair, and consistently applied. This helps prevent uncertainty and stress. We want to be consistent leaders in our workplaces so our people know what to expect from us. We are not an abusive parent. We are a consistent, reliable leader. Leaders can help employees combat burnout and lower stress by promoting work-life balance, managing workloads effectively, providing support and resources, fostering a positive work environment, encouraging open communication, promoting health and well-being, leading by example, implementing stress management programs, encouraging team collaboration, monitoring and adjusting workloads, providing career opportunities, and addressing workplace issues promptly. I know that's a long list. It was 12 things that I thought of off the top of my head that you could do. You don't have to do all 12. Just start with one. Just literally start with one. By taking these steps, leaders can create a supportive and healthy work environment that enhances employee well-being and productivity. We want happy, healthy employees, and we want to get the most out of them. There's nothing wrong with that. Leading people can feel like chaos. Leading ourselves can feel like chaos. Burnout and stress seem like these ambiguous things that happen to us, but they are actually things that we can be aware they're occurring. There's things that we can do to slow the roll toward burnout and stress. There's things we can do for ourselves. There's things we can do in our organization, for our colleagues, for our employees. The work is worth it. Don't waste this chaos. Embrace it. And if there's anything that I can do, don't you hesitate to reach out. Till next time.